when saving lives is what you do, your standards are anything but standard. In fact, you set them higher than most to deliver results that patients can depend on. You refuse to compromise. We couldn't agree more. We are Edwards Life Sciences, and like you, we believe that good is never good enough. Rising to the challenge of today's TAVR patients isn't just a mission, it's a commitment. And because you set a higher standard, we set our sights on meeting you there. Welcome to the higher standard, your standard. Learn more at edwardstavr.com.
Welcome to Parallax by Ankur Kalra, a podcast produced by Radcliffe Cardiology to bring you a new angle of all things cardiology and the best from the US Cardiology Review. Published every second Monday, Ankur Kalra, MD, interventional cardiologist at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, USA, speaks with legendary cardiologists, reviews late-breaking trials, and interviews authors of our latest and best US Cardiology Review articles. We call them #audio articles. Parallax is the effect whereby the position or direction of an object appears to differ when viewed from different positions. So this podcast is your fix of reliable updates on all things cardiology by someone from a non-traditional background who is always looking at the industry from a new angle. Now, here's your host, Ankur Kalra, MD.
Hello, everyone. So we're in 2021 and, we've had quite the journey at Parallax. And I think just about the end of 2020, we aired the first patient episode, which, I believe was very well received. And, that was Lindsay Davis, former Miss Ohio, who discussed her journey with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And, she's a patient at the Cleveland Clinic. I have today with me another very special guest. She's another patient at the Cleveland Clinic. And, she was diagnosed with Ebstein's Anomaly. We're going to learn more about, we have a cardiology audience here, but, someone who's listening who's a patient or who's, not from the medical background, our guest is going to share her story of her journey with Ebstein's Anomaly. So we're going to learn a lot more about it. It's great that, Parallax has been given the opportunity to develop a platform not only for world-class and famous cardiologists, but also our patients and people who we serve and people who we work for. Without much further ado, welcome on the show, Mallory Abbott. Mallory, thanks for doing this, and I'm so happy that we've been able to carve out time to record this episode.
Absolutely. I am very excited to be here.
So Mallory, tell us about, your condition and when was the first time that you learned about Ebstein's Anomaly? Well, I think for those of us who are not from the medical background, maybe you want to, describe, what you know about Ebstein's Anomaly so that others can get educated. I know we have a large listenership, of our podcast is from the cardiovascular medicine community. But for those who are not, how would you like to describe your condition?
So Ebstein's Anomaly is a tricuspid valve defect. So the valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle. In my case, it just is very displaced, doesn't close properly. And there's leakage, which they rate on a 1 to 4 scale. And when I was born, they found it pretty much right away because I turned blue. I've got, a 4 leakage. So I have a pretty severe case that was also accompanied by ASD, atrial septal defect, a hole between the 2 atria. So I didn't really need any surgical intervention at the time of birth. But as I grew, like when I hit puberty around 12 years old, I, got pretty sick and needed surgery at that time where they did a repair of the valve as well as the ASD. And that was the first time I needed surgical intervention, but there has been much more since.
Wow. So, not sure how much of your early childhood you would remember, but are there any vivid memories from your early childhood, growing up to when you were pubertal? Did you experience any symptoms or any impediments to how what a normal childhood looks like?
It's interesting that you ask that, because I was actually just writing last night, trying to kind of discover for myself when the first time I really noticed like a stamina issue, or, I kind of describe the way I feel, especially when I'm exercising, is just a lot of pain throughout my whole body, bones, muscles, joints, like my body just is not getting enough oxygenated blood to recover itself. So it's just screaming pain when I'm exercising. And I was a ballet dancer from the time I was 3. And looking back, I loved it. I loved to dance. And I remember being in class at 7 years old, loving to dance, and no 7-year-old puts themselves through that kind of pain. So I really don't think that I had symptoms at that young of an age, because I wouldn't have done it. I would not have continued to dance if it was hurting me that badly. But by the time I was 11, 12, it was hard. I can remember just being exhausted, winded. I can remember leaving dance classes crying that I could not keep up with my peers. I was on a competitive team, and going to dance competitions where you're dancing all day long was just, I felt like I was dying. And I turned very, very blue at a dance competition around 12 years old. So we made an appointment with my cardiologist, who I was already seeing, once a year anyway. And things just got really bad really quick. And that's when they scheduled the first surgery. So I guess probably around 10, 11, 12 is when the stamina issues and the pain started.
So your first surgery was done where? Where did you seek care for the very first operation?
So I was being treated from birth at MCO, which is now UTMC in Toledo. And when my cardiologist suggested that I needed surgery, he sent me to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And that was where I had my first 2 open heart surgeries.
Okay, so at University of Michigan, which obviously is a world-class center, also a great training program, both for cardiologists and cardiac surgeons. So tell us a little bit more about how was your experience with surgery. I mean, at the time, I mean, you're I'm assuming like, just about teenage or approaching teenage years. So, I'm sure you would have vivid memories from that experience, or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I do have some. I think it's very interesting what your brain does when you are a victim of intense trauma like that, because it almost, protects itself by forgetting a lot. So sometimes I feel like the memories I have are maybe just from pictures or, stories that my parents and siblings tell me. But I do know that going into it, I had no idea what to expect. I was in the 7th grade, and they just they don't prepare you as well mentally, I think, as maybe they could. And, they do a much better job now. This was a decade and a half ago. But they did not, I had no idea that there was a chance that because of the bypass machine, I could suffer depression. I had no idea the physical toll it was going to take on my body for a very long time. In my head, I can remember being at dance like 3 days before my surgery and just thinking in my head, oh, I'm going to come out of this surgery and I'm going to be fixed. I'm going to have so much stamina. I'm going to keep up with the rest of my peers. I'm going to become like this great, company dancer because of this surgery. And it was the opposite. First of all, I had a very hard time with the surgery. I almost died several times. My blood pressure was just plummeting left and right after surgery and recovery. I was in the hospital for almost a month. losing all of that muscle tone I had built up. I was dancing 6 nights a week up until this point. So at 12, I was a pretty extreme athlete, and I just lost all that muscle mass being in the hospital. My stamina got worse, which makes sense to me now at an older age, because obviously after a surgery like that, there's a lot of cardiac rehab that you need to go through. But I was not expecting that. So I think I took about 6 months off of dance, also off of school. I was being homeschooled through that time. When I did finally go back to school, it was like for half days at first, because I would just get so tired. I would need to sleep all day. And then when I finally did go back to dance, I can remember trying to do like my first leap, like a big leap in the air that I used to be very good at, could get high, straight legs, and I could barely get off the ground. And I was like, oh, wow, that's different. Okay, well, I have no muscle anymore. So it was very challenging and very trying mentally. I went through a lot of depression after that, severe depression. And then 4 years later, I was back in the hospital having another surgery. So just as I was getting back to myself and recovered, it was time for another one.
Yeah, no, I was listening through your description, and, it bothers me, it bothers me that someone would have to go through that kind of depression and pain, not only physical pain, but also emotional pain of just having had to go through, a major operation at such a young age, and, all the repercussions it has, on lives of kids. So it's, kudos to you to have pulled through all that you have pulled through. So let me ask you, what led to the second operation?
So I just really wasn't having much improvement with stamina, with the cyanosis. And, I don't really remember back then what it was that made them decide to do another one. But so in the second one, they repaired the valve again. And then they also did a bidirectional Glenn procedure, which I know a lot of people are not familiar with, because when I bring it up, no one has any idea what that is. So during this procedure, they basically redirected my blood flow from the upper veins of my body directly to my lungs, rather than like my heart pumping the blood to the lungs first. So they did that, as well as another valve repair, and that did help my stamina for sure. I actually did very well physically from the age of 16 right after that one up until I was about like 24, 25. Definitely not as well as, a normal individual of that age, but I did much better. However, that bidirectional Glenn caused severe migraines. I had migraine headaches probably 5 days a week. I was again homeschooled for about 1.5 years dealing with those. But, in my opinion, it was a small price to pay for this stamina and endurance that it did give me, because for the last several years of high school up until college and young adulthood, I was extremely active, and the pain was much less. It had dissipated quite a bit, and I could do a lot more than I ever had been able to. And then when I was about 25 is when I went into heart failure and switched my care over to the Cleveland Clinic. And now I am waiting on a heart transplant.
Describe to me the day-to-day life of Mallory Abbott. So, so high school, college, and, you're waiting on a heart transplant now. How does a day look for you? Because I think it's important to talk about this. I feel, or maybe if you feel otherwise, then obviously you're gonna guide the conversation. But I just think that it's important for us as caregivers and physicians and cardiologists to get to know how our patients' lives are impacted because of the conditions that they have. I think it would add to our understanding of how it affects lives, and how it affects people, and how people have to sort of build their lives around their condition, which could be extremely challenging, and just unrelenting. So talk to us about that a little bit, because I think that would be very insightful for me personally, but also for our listenership.
Okay, so let me go back a couple years to when I first found out that I was in heart failure. At the time, I was working a very physically demanding job, and I was just not feeling well at all. I could pretty much only work. So I would come home from work and I would immediately go to bed. My self-care was just down the drain. I couldn't do anything outside of that. And if I would have tried, I would not have had the energy to continue along with my career. And at some point, about a year and a half ago, I just decided, okay, enough is enough. I cannot work myself to death anymore. I was getting sicker by the day. I couldn't eat. I was incredibly nauseated, flu-like symptoms every day, migraines every day. And then my stamina was just getting worse and worse by the minute. So I decided to quit my job, stop working. And, obviously I was very, very nervous about that. I had been working full time in a very demanding job for a long time. And I loved it. I loved to work, but I just made that decision for myself with, this suggestion of my cardiologist. And, a couple months later, I had another open heart surgery. So this was about a year ago now, where they put a pig valve in as well as a pacemaker. And after that surgery, I no longer had the daily migraines. That's so interesting to me. I hear all the time how open heart surgery really cures migraines and some patients with congenital defects, which just blows my mind. So I was very thankful for that the migraines were gone, the nausea was gone, I was able to eat again, and I definitely felt better. But the pig valve and the pacemaker have done nothing for my stamina, and it is still just getting worse and worse, which is why ultimately my cardiologist and I have decided that it's transplant time. So I'm going through all of those steps right now, which is a lot. So now, what does my life look like today, post-surgery and no longer working? It's hard, but I think everybody has their hardships, and it's just about making yourself stronger than your pain. So I am fortunate enough to get as much sleep as I need, which is a lot. 10, 12 hours. I take naps almost every day. I have a very strict self-care routine that just makes me happy and calm. I don't drink any caffeine. I have an extremely strict diet. And I just try to keep myself stress-free and happy despite everything. But there is a lot of pain. I wake up in the morning and my legs hurt because of the fluid that pools in your legs when you have right side heart failure. So I have to elevate my legs, and my bones just hurt because they're not getting enough oxygenated blood. I wake up kind of swollen, like even in my face and in my hands, not just in my legs. And it takes me a while to get going in the morning. And then I go to the gym. I take myself to the gym every day, almost every day, maybe more like 6 days a week. And I get as good of a workout in as I can. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour. It really does depend on what I'm doing. But during those workouts, especially like leg day or cardio days, it is extremely painful, extremely challenging. I get out of breath so quickly. I can barely do 2 or 3 minutes on an elliptical without needing to sit down and rest. I box, same thing, maybe a minute or two boxing, and then I have to sit down and rest. So that's hard, especially because my entire life I was an athlete, and the older I get and the more and more my heart failure progresses, the harder it gets. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Heart transplant is not guaranteed. It's a very rare thing. And if I do get a heart, I will be very, very lucky. But it'll change my life. So I'm very excited about it. And I've just learned after 29 years of dealing with this to, make my heart condition work for me, not against me. And it's really shaped who I've become.
So that's very empowering for patients to hear, Mallory. So describe that to us. Your last sentence, that you've sort of engineered your heart condition to work for you. How does that look in the life of Mallory Abbott? How does that translate into actionable item for other patients?
Well, when I decided to quit working, and I'm so fortunate that I was able to do so, it opened up a lot of free time, and I'm a creative individual. So I just started writing a lot about what I've been through, and I started gaining, a small social media following. And to my surprise, I guess I was quite inspiring to people. And it just started to grow. And I had a good friend of mine convince me to compete to be on the cover of a magazine for tattoo models, because I'm covered in tattoos. And with this competition, every competitor had to have kind of like what they would do if they won, because there was obviously like a large monetary prize with winning the competition. So my thing was, I wanted to start a nonprofit focused on people with waiting on organ transplants or with other severe illnesses. And I wanted to kind of open like a dance for wellness dance studio. And I competed to be on the cover of this magazine, and I didn't win, but I got really, really close. There were like 60,000 women in the competition, and I was in the top 3. So after that, I didn't even really like think much of it. And then it just like kept going and going. And, I got closer and closer to the top. And I was just so empowered by the outreach that I did. I held a few organ donation awareness events in downtown Cleveland. And it was so empowering that even though I did not get the cover, I just wanted to continue with what I was doing. So I started podcasting myself. I started blogging and just being more present on social media. And I get messages every day about how I've touched people's lives and how I've made some of their problems just so much easier to deal with. For whatever reason, I've had, other patients with congenital heart defects reach out to me, just saying that I've inspired them to really stop feeling so bad for themselves. And I guess like that's what it's all about. I used to feel so bad for myself. I used to look at other athletes at dance or in the gym who were just so fit and they could just do cardio for an hour. And I would be jealous and mad and just not understand and have this why me mantra. And I just was able to stop doing that because of the lives that I have touched in the last year. And instead, I have a mantra of, I understand why this is the path that I was put on. And I have no doubt that, in the end, I will come out feeling much better and doing much better.
So so you've touched upon, Mallory, a topic which is very close to my heart, and that is when people face adversities in life, or when people when people come into your lives and then they leave your lives, or when you face any kind of adversity, whether it's loss of a person or loss of a job or loss of an ability, or any loss or any physical impairment or impediment. The universe is trying to put you on a path which you may not understand, and feel frustrated and jealous and um, just dejected, disappointed, whatever adjective you want to use. But I think at some point, yeah, and I think it's very human to go through those emotions. I mean, I'm not trying to discount or brush under the carpet those emotions. Those emotions are real. But I do think that in the spiritual journey, there is a switch that occurs, which which is the beginning of the elevation journey, right? Because it's like you've hit rock bottom, and that's where the universe wanted you to be. And then the universe sort of sends you, it's like a transposition of great vessels arterial switch operation. It sort of sends you a switch, and then the game switches, and the elevation journey begins. So I want you to be more descriptive, as much as you want to be, obviously. But tell us the secret behind that switch. Tell us how the Why Me mantra got transferred, or supplanted by this path is for me and is working for me mantra, because I think that is very important, and that is where the game changes. At least that's how my perception is.
I think I just woke up one day and didn't want to be a victim anymore. I wanted to become more than the sick girl. I wanted people to look at me with a smile and just a proud look on their face, instead of a look that just was like, oh, I feel so bad for her. And I just decided one day to just stop thinking about, and I don't want it to seem like I never think about my heart condition and like it never affects me and I never get sad, because I do. But I wanted it to stop consuming my life. There was a long time where I was unable to do anything. I didn't succeed going to college because I could not focus on studying, because all I thought about was being sick. And those, the college, those were the good years with my health. I took a job that was very distracting to my mind, that just had my mind working so hard that I couldn't think about those things because it was all I did. And I would go home and just think about being sick because of the way my body felt. And it just got exhausting. That got so exhausting. So I just made the decision, and it's a hard decision. It's something I still have to work for every day. I'm a big fan of having a routine to keep yourself in a positive mindset. Starting with waking up in the morning and having the first thing I do not be touching my cell phone, but instead doing a little bit of yoga and, skincare routine, taking a hot shower, just to put my mind in a place of being thankful to be alive and thankful for myself, rather than in a place of anxiety when you're, connecting to a screen as soon as you wake up. I read a lot of books on just how to relax, how to be happy, how to change the way your brain thinks. I meditate a lot. I eat extremely healthy, which I think has a big, big role in brain function and brain health. And I just put all of those things that I read and that I've learned into practice as best I can. And my brain has definitely changed drastically in the last year and a half since I've made self-care and being happy my main focus. It's capable of things I never ever thought that it would be capable of. My memory is astonishing. My cardiologist used to ask me, if I suffered from brain fog, and I would say yes. And they attributed that to the heart failure and the lack of oxygen. But that was not the reason I had brain fog. It was because I was depressed and my brain wanted me to have brain fog. I don't have it anymore at all. And another thing that really keeps me feeling this way is just knowing that really what I'm going through is not that bad. It's hard, but it's not that bad. I'm lucky enough to live very close to, one of the best hospitals in the world for what I have going on. I'm lucky enough to have a supportive family. I'm lucky enough to have food and shelter. There's a lot of people who don't have any of those things.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying all of that. Gratitude is a muscle that all of us, ought to practice on a daily basis. And I really, really liked what you said about having a routine. I think anytime you're going through a challenging time in your life, I think it's extremely important, and also, it's part of the survival skill set, right? It's to start nurturing a routine and start adhering to that routine. Be very meticulous and methodical about it, and stick to it, and just do the basic things very meticulously, very correctly, and sort of start getting deep into them. So for example, for you, I'm just reinforcing this for the listenership. So I think lessons from your journey would be inculcating an excellent routine for self-care, which I think is important for all of us, right? Whether from any and every walk of life, any profession, particularly physicians. I think self-care is extremely important for us too, because we need to have our barometers tuned in, because we need to be able to take care of our patients who trust us and rely on us in their vulnerable moments. And we have to be ready to be able to deliver patient-centered, compassionate care for our patients. And so I really liked what you said about the idea of a routine. And you threw in there, a tip which is extremely, extremely useful. And that is not looking on your cell phone screen the first thing you get up in the morning. It's extremely disruptive to do that. Sort of ease yourself into the morning. I think that is extremely important self-care lesson. Which I've also started to imbibe, over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's one of the best changes that I made, as well as not taking the cell phone to bed. About an hour before I go to bed, I put it away for the night. And that has helped a lot. I sleep better. And sleep is important for anyone, let alone someone in heart failure.
Absolutely. So Mallory, so about the journey of patient empowerment, this I'm probably touching upon some of your nonprofit work and also the work you've been doing over the past 1 year. And, pardon my ignorance, because that really is not my focus or area of expertise, Ebstein's Anomaly, but I'm assuming, there ought to be patient groups on Ebstein's Anomaly, right? There have to be.
I'm sure that there are. I've never specifically went online looking for a group, but I have found other patients with Ebstein's Anomaly just through hashtags on Instagram. It's a pretty rare condition, so it's not something I really see much of, even when I am looking at those hashtags.
Yeah. So I think a good segue for the podcast for us to, talk a little bit about the pitfalls as well as the advantages of social media, right? Particularly platforms like, Instagram and Twitter. I may be sounding old when I say Facebook because none of the newer generation of, I consider myself a millennial. I was, but I'm like the older generation millennial, and now they're the newer generation millennials. And, I think even Instagram is getting passe, but, regardless, some of the newer platforms, I don't even know. I'm not even existential on them. But, I wanted to ask this question to you, and that is, how important you think, going back to the question, both advantages and pitfalls, what would you say?
Okay, so I think that the big advantage to Instagram specifically is just being able to gain that audience. That way, when you are finally ready to, launch something physically, you have like a customer base already. They're there. You don't have to hand out flyers anymore and do hard marketing, which hard marketing is still a good thing to do. I did a lot of hard marketing when I was doing the Inked magazine competition. But you don't have to do it anymore. You can just go on your computer and market all you need to there. So I think that it offers kind of a sense of security when you're getting ready to, launch a business or a nonprofit or whatever it might be, publish a book, because you have that following who are going to respond well to it because they've been watching you grow it for so long. And especially with where I'm at right now, I'm very, very tired and I don't have a ton of energy to be doing a lot of extra stuff on top of, what I already do, and taking care of yourself is a full-time job when you have a condition like mine. So as far as starting my nonprofit goes, physically opening a dance studio, having students who are going to be relying on me to, teach them how to deal with these illnesses in a healthy way, and, looking up to me, I don't think that it's wise of me to do so right now because I need to really take care of myself. So I've decided that it's a good idea to wait on that part until I do get the transplant, which is hopefully right around the corner. They're thinking maybe within a year or so. So right now I've been focusing more on growing the audience for that, putting the idea out there, making myself known. So when that day does come, I've already got people there. I've already got people interested who know this has been coming, who are excited about it, and they want to be a part of it. The downfalls to Instagram. Oh, well, there's the obvious one of comparing yourself to everyone on the platform. There is the loss of in-person communication. There's the fact that every conversation starts to feel a bit monotonous. In fact, the reason I started podcasting was because I was so tired of answering the same questions every day. I would get so many messages where people would just want me to explain to them what was wrong with me or how it felt. And I have no problem telling people that, but doing it 20 times a day to 20 different people was exhausting. So I created my first podcast episode, like just specifically about my condition. So that way, when people asked me that, I could just say, oh, it's a really in-depth thing to get into. If you're interested, here's the link to my episode. So I would say, the monotony and comparing yourself to others and the time it takes away from in-person interactions are the biggest downfalls.
But, again, Mallory, thanks again for, coming over on the show. It's been our pleasure to have you. Any closing remarks for patients with, congenital heart diseases, or, for patients with Ebstein's anomaly? And, please do tell us if anyone who's listening who then wants to follow you on Instagram, do share your handle on the show and, or, about your nonprofit. If there's a website or, even your podcast, feel free to share it here.
Let's see. Okay. Closing remarks for anyone suffering from a congenital heart condition or really any kind of condition. Just don't let it define you. You define it. You have the power over it. Make self-care who you are. It is the most important thing you can do for yourself. And learn to love your body even when it feels like it hates you. Because that is what has really gotten me through it. If you do want to follow me on social media, I am Mazzy Mystical on Instagram, MAZZY Mystical. And I have my podcast and my blog and all that fun stuff linked right at the top of my profile. So just, be grateful for what you do have and stay positive.
All right. Excellent. Excellent closing remarks. Mallory, thanks again for being on the show. It was great to have you. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Dear cardiologists, we want to make this podcast about you and for you. So please email us your critical thoughts, comments and questions at podcast@radcliffe-group.com and visit uscjournal.com for more information. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram at Radcliffe Cardiology for daily updates. Join thousands of cardiologists and become a Radcliffean by registering to radcliffecardiology.com. You will receive regular newsletters and gain access to hundreds of expert interviews, educational webinars, clinical cases, and peer-reviewed articles from our 6 medical review journals on general cardiology, interventional cardiology, arrhythmia and electrophysiology, cardiac failure, and vascular and endovascular surgery. Thank you.